Alright guys, Punisher Max 17 here, and welcome to the second part of my tutorial videos. This part is about detailing and top coating. As you see before you, we have a piece that, has a lot of detail on it, but nothing painted. It's just solid black. So we're going to detail this. I know I did the armor purple pieces of the Berserk Fury on the first part of this work in progress, but these inner frame pieces have a whole lot more to detail, so that's why we're going to talk about those right here. So, what I use to detail my parts, if you guys didn't know, are these Citadel Games Workshop paints. Now, I use the previous line of paints because I still have these. I use chainmail and bolt gunmetal. I use a few other colors. Let's see, I think I got them right here. Shining gold, though it's really not my favorite color in the world, and mithril silver. Now, Citadel currently came out with a new line of paints, and they have colors that are basically the exact same thing as these, but they're under different names. They rebrand this kind of stuff to spike sales for some reason. I don't know. I think it's kind of stupid personally, but you can find these same colors, but they're under a different name now, and I'm not familiar with what they are to give you that advice. But bolt gunmetal is a darker metallic, chainmail is a medium metallic, and mithril silver is a light metallic silver. So, these paints, you pop the lid here and you just have a little paint in there and stuff. They thin with a little bit of water, just mix a little bit of that in. They spread really nicely, really nicely. So, let's go ahead and start. Get some of this bolt gunmetal on here and paint some details on this. Let's see how I can do this with the camera here. Let's hope you all will be able to see it. It goes onto the part very nicely. After it's been thinned a little bit, has no problem. Much easier painting with these by hand than it is things like Tamiya paints. A long time ago, I used Tamiya paints to hand detail paint and stuff, and that was a huge mistake. I was just beginning all this, and I didn't realize all these different paints that were available to me. Okay, let's go ahead and paint the part up here. And if you make a mistake, there's not much to worry about, especially on black parts like this. You can always take the brush pen I use for panel lining, cover that up a little bit, just paint it over it, and it blends right in when you flat coat it. Or other areas like where I touch the silver right in that little circular area, we're going to cover that up with another color here soon anyway. And I would like to say that I have some sort of rhyme or reason to the where I paint and where I don't paint and things like that on these, but the honest answer is I don't. I look at the part and I just kind of think to myself, that would look cool in metallic. That's a cool little separate area. Let's paint that, and it's a spur of the moment kind of thing, to be honest. I paint every part of the same mold the same, of course, but I don't have anything pre-planned as for how I'm going to paint it and what colors are going to be painted where. So if you were looking for insight into that, unfortunately I'm not going to be of much help. Just go with your gut and how you feel and what you think will look nice when you're painting. I've never really regretted that decision before, so occasionally you'll see somewhere that probably shouldn't have painted or you had difficulty with it, but if that ever happens to me, which rarely does, to be honest, it usually turns out fine, then I just throw that part back in with the next round of parts to be painted, and I paint over it in black and start again. Okay, so we've painted some of this bolt gunmetal. Obviously, that's not all that's going to go on this part, but let's move on to the chainmail color. So I'm going to be doing different parts of this in chainmail. So get a little bit on the brush here, and I use a very small brush. I get these things at like Hobby Lobby and stuff. Just gonna paint this whole section in right here. So just kind of sweep it over the whole thing. Sorry, I accidentally hit the camera with my hand while painting there. Actually, I think I hit it with the brush because I just about did it again. And like I said, these paints spread very, very smoothly. You don't have to worry about brushing over the whole thing and the brush catching some paint or something and it tearing it up. Never really had that happen. The shining gold is a little bit difficult to use, but all these metallics are absolutely outstanding. I have occasionally used some of the just regular colors. I've used like a purple on my Kieran Space type. Okay, so now I have completed painting all of the bolt gun metal and the chainmail on this part. Went ahead and finished that up so you guys didn't have to sit through like 5 minutes of painting there. If I could figure out how to do that fast-forwarded painting kind of video, I would just do that, but I'll have to look into that. Anyway, not the point. So now on to the gold. And I want to paint these little circles here in gold. And primarily what I use for my gold, because it's a lot shinier than this shining gold, is Tester's gold here. It has a lot more shiny gold feel. This is, let's see if you can see the color here. I don't know, it's not a color that I love, and the Tester stuff kind of fits in with the Tamiya gold leaf that I paint or airbrush on pieces a little better. So I have a different paintbrush for this because it is enamel, and just dab a little bit on there. It really doesn't take much with this stuff. Okay, so now painted the gold on there, gives a nice variance in the color, and we are essentially completed with this piece. Now, one thing you always want to remember is just to make sure you don't miss any parts that are going to be showing on the final kit, you know, or get them splattered with paint on the edge or something. Like on these parts, these here are parts of the toes that are going to be showing on the final kit. So if you just painted this and then kind of got paint a little splattered on the edge right up here, then that would have showed on the final kit, and you wanted to make sure and paint the whole thing. So that's just one little be sure to be on the lookout kind of note. And I actually have the other one completed painting too, so now we have both of the feet completely finished and ready for top coat and assembly after that. So very excited. I think it looks great. Alright, so now we're on to flat coating. And what I use for flat coating is this right here, this Alclad Lacquer Clear Coat Flat. If you watch my previous work in progress, you know this is a new kind of flat coat that I've been using. I typically, or historically, used Krylon flat coat on most of my other kits, but now I have switched to this, and I think it works quite nicely. Now this runs through the airbrush as opposed to the Krylon flat coat I used, which was a spray can. So you have to mix this and thin it just like you do paint. So I have an empty jar here that I've been using, and the ratio to this, as opposed to 50-50 for paint, this is probably more of a say 65-35 kind of thing. So you just want to pour some in here, and I got a little too much, so let's pour it back. So about that. Now, one thing to note with this stuff is you really got to shake it up before you use it. Make sure that you don't have any flat coat residue sitting at the bottom. That happens a lot if it's been sitting for a while. Now, next, you add a lacquer thinner, which the lacquer thinner I just got at a Walmart. Not too expensive, and it's just basic lacquer thinner. And I'll show you it in just a second. Okay, this is the lacquer thinner I use. It's pretty industrial looking and stuff, but works pretty well. So you open it up, and it takes a screwdriver or something to get the lid open on this. It's actually kind of a pain. There we go. And just fill this up to the top. Then you take something, stir it up. Probably don't want to use the paintbrush you use on most everything else because it is clear coat and it'll kind of mess some of that stuff up. So, mix it up there. And there you go, you got your, and I know mine's spilling over a little bit, but that's okay. No big deal. You have your flat coat that you will be using to cover your pieces. Okay, so now we're finally on to flat coating our pieces. As you can see here, this is one of the pieces that we had been working on in the previous tutorial. And as you can also see how the panel lining worked out, how it's not quite dark black, it's a lot lighter, but still quite noticeable in the panel lining, and that's the effect you get by putting the panel lines in there midway through. So, without further ado, we will panel line or flat coat this piece. So, I'll set this down and fill up my airbrush with some flat coat. There we go. And now the technique for this is going to be very similar to the technique for blending paint with the airbrush. You keep it a distance away and you just kind of try to hit the whole part. And I'm going to go ahead and start, and you'll see as I go. So you just hit it kind of lightly. You know, nothing to try to cover up too much. And that's about all you're going to do for your first coat right there. Just hit it real lightly and then go to some other parts or something. I'll go ahead and grab another part. And then flat coat that, just hit it real lightly. And now that's not going to be your only coat with this. Unlike paint, you're going to hit it with a couple of coats for the clear coat. So you'll wait a couple minutes or however long it typically takes your flat coat to dry. This lacquer stuff, you recoat it within, 2 minutes or so. So you just wait around a second. And I'm going to go ahead and flat coat the rest of my parts, and then we'll come back for the second round of flat coating. Okay, now that we've given the pieces some time to dry, you probably can't tell much difference in the video, to be honest, but you hit it with a second round of flat coat, and this time a little bit heavier on the spray. I don't know why, to be completely honest. You just hit it with a little bit heavier spray. Your last round of flat coat will be a little bit heavier spray. If you find out that you think it works better with 3 coats of flat coat, then by all means do that. I just happen to do 2. So you go ahead and get it covered one more time. And there we go. It already has a very flat look to it. Yet again, I know it's probably not very noticeable in the video, and the light kind of washes out the color anyway. But that is the second round of flat coating, and that's how you do it, really. There isn't a whole lot more to it than that. Sometimes you're going to make mistakes with flat coating. Sometimes it's not going to go well. As a general rule of thumb, by the way, when flat coating, wait probably at least 12 to 24 hours after painting a part to flat coat it. Otherwise, you run a high risk of eating the paint that's already on there, especially when you're flat coating acrylics on top of acrylics. It's a little bit easier here because I'm putting a lacquer on top of a acrylic, but something like Krylon flat coat, if you use that, you're putting acrylics on top of acrylics, and I can say from experience, if you flat coat that too soon after painting, you're going to be in a whole world of trouble because you're starting the whole process all over again. And that's not a lot of fun right there. So that is one general rule of thumb for flat coating. And now, after flat coating, let the parts dry. Generally, whatever flat coat you're using is going to tell you a drying time. This says about an hour. You might want to wait a little bit longer. With Krylon, I know you definitely wanted to wait probably 6 hours or more. Just long enough before you handle them so that you don't leave impressions of your fingernails or your fingerprints or just smudge anything. You definitely want to be safe with the flat coat. It's a very easy part of the process to have to start all over, and it's really disappointing when that happens. So, I guess that'll be all for this tutorial here. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I'd love to answer them. I'd love to help you out. If there's anything else you're curious